After 12 years, my wife requested an open marriage. I responded by asking for a divorce. 12 years. 12 years of commitment, love, and what I thought was a strong, unbreakable bond. Then, one evening, my wife asked for something that would shatter everything I thought I knew about our relationship. She wanted an open marriage. At first, I thought she was joking. Surely, after over a decade together, this was not something she seriously wanted. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized she was dead serious. Her reasons, though vague, seemed to suggest a need for more. A need that I was no longer fulfilling. The woman I had shared my life with, the one who had promised to be with me through thick and thin, was now telling me she wanted to explore other connections. I could not believe it. My mind raced with emotions I had never felt before. Hurt, confusion, and betrayal. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. If she wanted that, I was not the one for her anymore. So I gave her an answer that would change everything. We met when we were in our 20s. Fresh out of college, both of us eager to start our lives and build something together. At first, it was everything I could ever ask for. Laughter, shared dreams, long nights talking about the future. We were the perfect couple, or so I thought. We worked well together, supported each other, and had built a life that many envied. Our families loved us, our friends admired us, and we even bought a house and started a family of our own. There were bumps along the way, of course. Every relationship has its challenges, but I always believed in us. We had something solid. We had trust, commitment, and mutual respect. At least that's how I felt. But recently, things started to change. She became distant, withdrawn, and often lost in thought. I attributed it to work stress, the strain of raising children, or perhaps just the normal ebb and flow of life. I tried to be understanding, patient even, but the signs were there, even if I refused to see them. One night, as we sat down for dinner, she dropped the bombshell. She said, "I think we should try an open marriage." Her words lingered in the air, thick with a tension I couldn't quite explain. It felt as if the ground beneath me was shaking, and I could not find my footing. She went on to explain that she wanted the freedom to explore other relationships, that she felt restricted in our marriage. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but there was no mistaking the sincerity in her eyes. I stared at her, unable to respond. I had known my wife for over a decade, and I thought I knew everything about her. But this was beyond comprehension. Our marriage had always seemed like something that could withstand anything. We had a solid foundation built on mutual respect, love, and shared goals. We met in college, and from the very start, it felt like we were meant to be together. I remember the first time we went out on a date. How easy it felt, like we had known each other for years. We talked about everything. Our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. We both wanted the same things. A family, a home, a life full of adventure and love. As we moved forward in life, things went as planned. We graduated, got good jobs, and bought our first house. The kind of house we dreamed of, with a white picket fence and a backyard where we could eventually have kids. And when we had our first child, it was the happiest moment of our lives. Our relationship was more than just a partnership, it was a team. We navigated the challenges of parenthood together, learning from each other every day. However, as the years went by, I began to notice small changes. The late nights at work turned into weekends away, and the emotional distance between us grew without any real explanation. She would say she was fine, but her actions spoke differently. I could feel it in the way she spoke to me, the way she barely looked me in the eye anymore. It seemed like we were living separate lives under the same roof. I tried to talk to her about it, but she always brushed it off, saying that everything was just busy or stressful. Then one day, out of the blue, she told me she wanted an open marriage. She explained it as if it was the most normal thing in the world, like we were just having another casual conversation. But to me, it felt like my entire world was crumbling. I had no idea what had led to this point or how I had missed all the signs. The moment she dropped the bombshell about wanting an open marriage, I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. The room seemed to close in, and all I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat, thumping in my ears. At first, I thought I had misheard her. I had to ask her to repeat herself. "You want an open marriage?" I asked, almost in disbelief. She nodded, her eyes looking down as she spoke. "It just feels like we're stagnating," she said softly, as though this was some casual topic. "I think we need something more. I need more. We need to explore things outside our marriage, without feeling guilty about it." Her words felt like a slap across the face. More? What did she mean by that? I couldn't understand. For 12 years we had built a life together, and now, out of nowhere, she was telling me that what we had was no longer enough. I was overwhelmed with confusion, hurt, and betrayal all at once. I tried to stay calm, to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions in my head, but it was impossible. I could not fathom how she could even think about this, let alone suggest it. How long have you been thinking about this? I asked, needing to know how deep this feeling ran. She hesitated, almost as if she was embarrassed. A while, she finally admitted. Maybe the past year or so. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. For a year, she had been harboring these feelings, and I had been blind to them. I had noticed the subtle changes, but I had written them off as just part of the stress of life. I had thought we were just going through a rough patch. But this was something completely different. I had to gather my thoughts before responding. Do you realize what you're asking? I said, my voice trembling with a mix of frustration and disbelief. Do you understand the consequences of what you're suggesting? She nodded, but her expression was unreadable. I do, but I think it could bring us closer in the long run. You can see it as a way for us to grow. I had to take a moment. This was not the person I had married. This was not the woman I had committed my life to. I had given everything for this relationship, and now, she was asking for something so foreign to me. My mind raced with thoughts of what had happened over the past year, the small signs that I had ignored, the long nights at work, the unexplained absences, the distance that had formed between us. Had I been that blind? Or was this all part of something I would never have imagined? I knew something had been off, but I never suspected this. I wondered if I had been living in a bubble, unaware of the cracks that were slowly forming beneath the surface. There was a time when I thought nothing could break us. I had always believed that we were untouchable, that our bond was unshakable. But now, as I sat there, hearing her words, I felt like I was seeing her for the first time. She was a stranger in that moment, someone I could no longer recognize. My mind began to race. If she wanted an open marriage, then did that mean she had already been looking for someone else? Had she already cheated on me? The thought made me sick to my stomach. Was this all just a convenient excuse to cover up something that had already happened? Was she waiting for my approval before taking that next step? I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and I had no idea how to stand up again. What does this mean for us? I asked quietly, afraid to hear the answer. I don't know, she admitted, looking away, but I think it's what we need. There was no anger in her voice, no remorse, no apology, just a simple, almost clinical answer. It was as if she had already made up her mind, and this was nothing more than a formality. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. This wasn't just a suggestion. It was a demand, a plea to change everything about our relationship, to shift the entire dynamic. And she was convinced this was the right move. As I sat there, struggling to find my words, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss. This wasn't the woman I had spent the last 12 years with. This was someone entirely different. I couldn't fathom what had changed in her mind, but it was clear now that she had already made her decision. And then, it hit me, this wasn't just about an open marriage. It was about everything that had led up to this point. The distance, the secrecy, the emotional withdrawal. She had already checked out. She had already distanced herself from me in every way possible, and now she was looking for a way to justify it. She wanted permission to explore other relationships, to feel the excitement she no longer felt with me. My heart sank, and all I could think was that I had been a fool. I had been so focused on providing, on being the best husband, that I had missed the signs. I had missed the person I thought I knew. And now, here I was, faced with a decision I never imagined I would have to make. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. She had asked for an open marriage. But more than that, she had asked for an escape, a way out of our marriage without actually leaving. It was a coward's way out, and I realized I could not let this go any further. After that conversation, I found myself in a haze of emotions. My mind was running 1,000 miles a minute. I was both numb and angry. I spent the next few days avoiding her, trying to process everything. But how could I process this? How could I wrap my mind around the fact that the woman I loved, the woman I had dedicated myself to for 12 years, was asking for something so unrecognizable? Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I was haunted by the thought of her being with someone else. The worst part was that I didn't even know who it was. Was there someone she had been seeing already? Had she already crossed that line? The uncertainty was maddening. I tried to hold it all together for the sake of our family, but I could not pretend anymore. Then, one night, after hours of trying to collect my thoughts, I made a decision. I had to confront her. I could not live in limbo any longer. I needed answers. I needed to know what had been going on behind my back. I sat her down in the living room, the same place we had shared so many memories. But tonight, everything felt different, felt colder, emptier. I need to know, I said, my voice firm despite the turmoil inside. Have you already been seeing someone? Have you cheated on me? She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and indifference. The look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't surprised by my question, as if she had been expecting it. But there was no apology, no remorse, just silence. For a long time, she didn't say anything. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded slightly. Yes, she whispered. The word echoed in my ears. Yes. The betrayal hit me like a wave, crashing over everything I thought I knew. I had suspected it, but hearing her confirm it left me reeling. My stomach churned. I had always thought I would be the one to walk away if things went wrong. But now, I felt like I had been blindsided. Who is it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The words tasted like poison in my mouth. She hesitated again, and then, with a resigned sigh, she spoke. It's someone I met at work. We've been seeing each other for months. Months. My mind couldn't comprehend what she had just said. We had been living under the same roof, sharing our lives, our children. And she had been hiding this from me for months? How long were you planning to keep this from me? I asked, struggling to keep my composure. Until I couldn't anymore, she said, her voice flat. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how else to handle it. I felt trapped in our marriage, and when I met him, I felt alive again. I thought you would understand, that we could work through it. Work through it, I repeated, incredulous. By having an affair? She looked away, as if embarrassed by the reality of what she had done. I know it was wrong. I never meant to hurt you, but I was suffocating. I wanted more than what we had. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her understand the depth of the betrayal. But I couldn't. Instead, I stood up and walked away from her, needing space to breathe. My mind was reeling. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But she wasn't the only one who had been living a lie. I had been so focused on being the perfect husband, working long hours, providing for our family, that I had failed to see the cracks forming in our marriage. I had believed that love would always be enough, that commitment would always win. But here we were, with everything falling apart, and I couldn't even recognize the woman sitting before me. You want an open marriage, but you've already cheated, I said, my voice trembling. And now you want me to accept it? To accept you being with someone else? She didn't answer. She simply looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and frustration. It was clear now that this had nothing to do with an open marriage. It was about her seeking something she no longer found with me. She had already moved on emotionally. She had already checked out, and now she was asking for permission to do the same physically. I felt a deep sense of betrayal not just by her, but by myself as well. I had given her everything. My trust, my loyalty, my love. And she had taken it for granted. The reality was that I had been a fool. It wasn't just the affair that hurt me. It was the fact that she had thought she could do this without facing the consequences. It was the fact that she had been dishonest, hiding her true feelings for so long. And now, she was trying to manipulate me into accepting her actions. I couldn't let that happen. I had to take control back. I think we both know what this means, I said, my voice breaking under the weight of the moment. It's over. I can't do this anymore. Her face fell, and for the first time since the conversation began, I saw a flicker of regret. Please don't say that, she pleaded. I didn't mean for it to end this way. I thought you would understand. I thought you would be okay with it. I can't be okay with this, I said, shaking my head. You've broken my trust. You've betrayed me, and now you want me to be okay with it? You want me to accept you being with someone else while I stand by and pretend it's all fine? No, that's not how this works. She didn't say anything else. The silence between us was deafening, and the weight of it settled over me like a heavy cloud. There was nothing more to say. The truth had come out, and the damage was irreversible. As I walked away from her that night, I knew that my life was about to change forever. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my future with, had turned into someone I no longer recognized. And now I had to figure out what to do next. I had to pick up the pieces of my broken heart and move forward. The days following that conversation were the hardest of my life. The air felt thick with tension, and the house, once filled with laughter and love, now felt empty. Every room, every corner seemed to remind me of the life I had thought was perfect. It was a daily struggle to face her, to even speak to her. The hurt I felt was overwhelming, like a constant weight pressing down on my chest. But what hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that the woman I had loved for over a decade had changed so much. I spent the first few days in a state of numbness. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't think straight. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of her with someone else haunted me. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I had missed some sign, some clue that would have told me where things had gone wrong. But nothing stood out. It was as if everything had been perfectly fine until it wasn't. I needed to get away from it all. I needed space to think, to process. So I left. I booked a hotel room, packed a bag, and left without saying a word. I couldn't face her anymore. I couldn't look at her and pretend everything was okay. I had to clear my mind, to make sense of the chaos inside me. The hotel room was quiet, a place of temporary solace where I could finally think. I spent hours walking the streets, reflecting on everything that had happened. I had spent 12 years building a life with her, and in an instant it all felt like it was crumbling. I kept asking myself, what now? What was the next step? Did I fight for our marriage, or was it truly beyond repair? I missed the good times, the happy moments we had shared. I thought about our early years together, when everything felt easy and natural. We had dreams, goals, and plans for the future. But now, those plans seemed distant, irrelevant. How could I move forward with someone who had no regard for the trust we had built? As the days passed, I came to a painful conclusion. I could not stay in this marriage. I could not stay with a woman who had so willingly betrayed me. I could not continue to live in a relationship where she had already emotionally checked out. There was no turning back. Our marriage had been fractured beyond repair. But even though I knew it was over, the pain of finalizing everything was still unbearable. The thought of a divorce, of tearing apart everything we had worked for, was gut-wrenching. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage. I had always believed that love and commitment could conquer anything. But now I felt foolish. I returned home after a week, knowing the inevitable conversation had to happen. She was sitting in the living room, waiting for me. Her eyes were tired, a mix of guilt and frustration in them. She knew what was coming, and I knew too. I think we both know what needs to happen, I said, my voice firm despite the emotions swirling inside me. I want a divorce. Her face twisted in pain, but she didn't say anything. She just nodded, as if she had been expecting it all along. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for it to end this way. The words felt hollow. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry couldn't fix what she had done. I had given her everything, and in return, she had shattered me. It was time to walk away. The divorce proceedings were difficult, to say the least. There were arguments, long silences, and legal battles. The hardest part was the toll it took on our children. They didn't understand what was happening. They didn't understand why their mom and dad couldn't be together anymore. But as much as I loved them, I knew I couldn't stay in a toxic environment for their sake. They deserved better than a father who was constantly hurt and a mother who had already moved on. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy. I had to find a new sense of identity, as I had been defined by my marriage for so long. But I slowly started to find myself again. I reconnected with old friends, focused on my career, and spent time doing things I had once loved. It wasn't about finding a replacement for her, but rather about rediscovering who I was without her. Over time, the pain began to fade. I still carried the scars of the betrayal, but I no longer let them control me. I learned that healing was a slow process, one that required patience and self-compassion. I learned that it was okay to feel broken, but it was also okay to rebuild. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control how I moved forward. My ex-wife and I never spoke much after the divorce. We communicated only when necessary, especially regarding our children. I had come to terms with the fact that she wasn't the person I thought she was. The woman I had once trusted had become a stranger, and that was something I had to accept. Looking back, I still don't know if I was wrong for ending it. Maybe there was a part of me that could have tried harder to fix things. Maybe I could have forgiven her, but I don't think I could have ever truly forgiven the betrayal. What she had done was too much, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice my self-respect for the sake of saving a marriage that was already broken. Now, I live my life differently. I'm more cautious, more aware of the people I trust. I understand that love isn't enough sometimes. Trust, respect, and loyalty are just as important, if not more so. And in the end, it was my need for those things that led me to walk away. I know it was the right choice for me. If you found my story compelling, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories and experiences. Press the bell icon so you never miss an update.